Meet Abhimanyu. He's in his early 30s, lives in Delhi, and from the outside he looks like a perfectly decent father. But the moment his front door clicks shut, the environment switches out. Inside his home, a heavy atmosphere hangs over the dining table. Conversations are replaced by silent dinners. Love is treated as a conditional reward, measured by achievements and punctuated by short-tempered corrections. Curious, slightly tense, lately Abhimanyu is haunted by a relentless sense of déjà vu. He hears a voice echoing in his mind, asking why this suffocating emotional environment feels so intensely familiar, as if he's reliving memories that belong to someone else. The most destructive conflicts rarely involve external enemies on a physical front line. They are invisible, psychological battles fought quietly within the walls of our own homes. To understand Abhimanyu's present, we have to look closely at his past. Growing up, his father was a dominant presence, obsessed with making a man out of his son through relentless, severe discipline. In that house, the lines were dangerously blurred. Emotional and physical violence were disguised as necessary correction, and fear was systematically confused with love. Abhimanyu swore he would never replicate that dynamic. Yet today, despite his best intentions, he is unknowingly echoing the exact same tone, the same cold punishments, and the same quiet terror with his own son. We spend our lives running from the pain of our past, only to unknowingly reconstruct the very architecture we are desperately trying to escape. Trauma functions as a psychological blueprint. We inherit it, and until we notice the design, we subconsciously build our lives exactly to its specifications. There was one counterforce in Abhimanyu's childhood, his mother, Meenakshi. She stood in stark contrast to his father's cruelty, offering steady, gentle, nurturing wisdom. She taught him about Dharma. Rather than a rigid set of rules or religious obligations, she explained it as an active, living truth, the path that follows you when you listen to your soul. Placing her hand on his head, she quietly planted seeds of psychological independence. She constantly reminded him that he didn't have to be his father's shadow. He had the capacity to be his own son. But after she passed away, those teachings faded. They lay buried in his subconscious, dormant like echoes in a dream, waiting for a moment when he would finally need them. Escaping a cycle of pain requires an entirely new philosophical framework. Without a new blueprint to follow, human nature defaults to the trauma it already knows. One night, a forgotten mantra from his mother triggers a lucid dream. Abhimanyu finds himself standing inside the shattered remnants of his childhood home. Looking down, he sees a younger version of himself, bleeding, terrified, and absorbing the full weight of a looming, shadowy figure shouting from above. As the dream shifts into focus, the monstrous, older figure screaming at the child isn't his father. It's Abhimanyu himself. For the first time, the denial breaks. He sees that he has been recreating the very cruelty he survived, acting as the villain to his own son. This is the moment the mind can no longer hide from its own hypocrisy. The dual nature of being both victim and perpetrator becomes impossible to ignore. This illustrates samsara, the endless spinning loop of inherited karma. It functions like the chakravyu from the Mahabharata. It's a sophisticated maze with a fatal flaw. You are taught how to enter, but never how to exit. Generational trauma does not move in a straight line from parent to child. It spirals back on itself, forcefully turning the former victim into the new perpetrator to sustain its momentum. Conducting a brutal self-audit, Abhimanyu arrives at a grim conclusion. I am my father's punishment, and my son is mine. Until the hidden architecture of a traumatic cycle is dragged into the light and made fully conscious, it will spin endlessly, disguising inherited behaviors as our natural fate. Back in the physical present, Abhimanyu stands quietly, watching his son sleep. For the first time, he recognizes his own childhood fear reflected in the boy's expressions. In that quiet room, his mother's advice finally breaks through the noise. You cannot rewrite the past, but you can end the story differently. The next morning, he does something that fractures the timeline. He performs the profound, simple act of sitting down and apologizing to his son. he begins the active work of unlearning. He starts therapy, he adopts meditation. He allows himself to be visibly vulnerable, and for the first time in decades, he cries. Dismantling a multi-generational curse begins with a single moment of absolute humility and deliberate, conscious intervention. To break the outer maze of family dysfunction, you must first deliberately shatter the inner loop of unprocessed ego and pain. In mythology, Abhimanyu was killed because he couldn't escape the maze. This modern Abhimanyu chooses a different ending because he actively seeks out the exit. Walking together outside, the young boy looks up and asks if he will grow up to be just like his dad. Abhimanyu kneels down, looks his son in the eye, and promises him that he will be better. Meenakshi's voice echoes one final time, offering a Vedic invocation that signals a transition out of the shadows. Tamasi ma Jyotir Gamaya. From darkness, lead me to light. Generational trauma is never a life sentence. It is a mechanical loop, one that can be consciously stopped by choosing the path of healing.